Hey, Josephine.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Your camera always looks so good. Do you have a special camera or since you're the video guy, you already know how to set the settings up to make it look good?
I'm using a DSLR.
Okay, okay. You and Jared, it's not Jared, it's another guy. He always has it really focused and it looks good.
Yeah, well, were you at the advisory board meeting this last week?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, so Sony comes, someone from Sony comes to my advisory board, and he looks phenomenal.
I think that's the guy because it's all set up. Yeah, it looks
I
so
mean, it's
good.
like perfect. Also, Tamron does the same thing. It always makes me look bad.
Well, see, I use my standard camera. Um, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I I, I went and I Googled the different lenses and what they mean because I figured it's about time I figure that out because
Heck
I've
yeah.
always wanted to know
Well,
like
come
what's
hang out with us.
oh yeah because I have a really I loved photography but I chickened out about trying to do anything with it, but I have a Nikon camera. It's old now, but
Which one?
oh, I always forget it. Hold on, let me see. One thing. It's a it's a Nikon. Where are you? This isn't the one I wanted because by the time I could afford the camera, got a new one. Now this one's old. Gosh, I don't even know. Where would I find? Oh, it's a Nikon D3100. So it's
Oh yeah.
old.
Yeah, no, it's still a good camera though.
I love it, but I just don't know that, I need to I want to get different lenses, but I
Yeah.
just don't know what they
Well, you can, Josephine, you can come down and borrow our lenses. I have a lens for every single focal length
mean. Oh, nice.
in our department. So come on down, test it out, play with it, put it on your camera.
Oh, right on. I'm
Yeah,
gonna do that because
yeah,
I love this camera. I did, when I was in high school, I did the photography when you had to, go into the dark room and everything.
yeah. It's
That
still
was
there too.
fun.
That dark room is still there. We were actually building in it yesterday, trying to fix some stuff.
Nice. I don't know what there's something about that smell. I
That is
like
the
the
truth right there. That
I,
smell, I still, it still brings back memories of when I started in
yeah,
the dark room. So,
awesome.
are
Yes,
you
yes.
back on campus this summer?
We start back on campus like one day a week starting May 24th, 25th,
Okay.
something like that. I have
Well,
it on my calendar.
when you're on campus, let me know, and um, I'll make sure that I'm there that day.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Cool. Because I would like to I love this thing. And I can't lie, I'm one of those people. I rely on my camera phone too much. And then every time I'm outside, I'm trying to show my mom how beautiful things are, right? And then, like, when I take a picture with my phone, I was like, this doesn't do it justice.
Yep.
Why am I not? Why do the mountains look like hills and not what they are? I don't know. I think I'm just
Just
doing
I rely on my camera, on my phone camera too much too.
okay.
Do it all, when I go hiking. I don't bring my DSLR. I bring my iPhone.
Yeah. What do you think of those lenses that you can put on the camera on the iPhones now?
Some of them are great.
Yeah, because I bought them. It doesn't seem to do anything.
Are you on which iPhone do you have?
The 11. So I
Okay.
have like the two lenses.
So the iPhone 12 now shoots in RAW, and the
Really?
image quality is just unbelievable for a phone. So
iPhone. They're always finding a way to separate me from my money.
always.
Always. My son's one of those, Android is the superior product type person. And I'm like, well, whatever. If you think so, I'm not going to argue. I don't care. I don't have a horse in this race. I know that Apple doesn't change much. Oh, yeah. I think you muted. You're muted, Paul.
You missed a good uh, advisory board meeting. We had we got to sing happy birthday to one of the people. It was hilarious having 20 some people sing happy birthday over Zoom. It's pretty funny.
Imagine everything was all asynchronous, huh?
Everything was all over the place. It was hilarious.
Oh my gosh, I love it. My kids absolutely hate being they hate the happy birthday song. They hate being the center of attention. And luckily we're not in California because at home, the happy birthday is just the first part because then you have to break it down. And that goes on and it's torture for them. I love it. I
That's
love
kind
every
of the
minute
fun,
of it.
isn't it? It's
Yes.
yeah.
I've been waiting to find things to annoy my children with now that they're all big people. It's
Yes.
so easy to do.
So easy.
See, when they were little, my weirdness was, oh, that's just my mom. Now it's like, oh God, you guys, this is my mom. Forgive her.
My parents did it to me, so
They don't know embarrassed until they got picked up. Like I got picked up from middle school by my dad, who decided to wear flares,
that's
not
yeah.
not bell bottoms, flares
That's great.
on a middle school campus.
Well, when I'm on TikTok, I see quite a few people, parents on TikTok, and just embarrassing them when they pick them up from school. Some funny TikToks.
I love it. I absolutely love it. TikTok. They have some really funny videos on there. I like funny stuff, so
That's great,
anything I can
Eric.
do. I love it. Yeah, it's always good when the other kids will jump in to annoy the others.
Well, my kids have a habit of just coming to me quietly and then waiting for me to walk towards them in darkness. So they've heard me scream so many words out loud.
My daughter's good at appearing places. I'm like, where did you come from? Like, why are you so ninja? Make a noise. Oh, it's crazy. Like she'll just be there.
Yeah.
Kids. Are you excited that semester's almost over, right? You excited?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm ready for classes to be over. I think the students are too, although the semester's been fun. But yes, it's coming to a close fast.
Oh yeah. It was real quick. My son's at Red Rocks right now, and I said, okay, you're almost there. A couple more weeks.
So close.
Calm down. Oh man, you going camping this summer?
Yes, but I can't think that far away.
Okay, yeah, I
Yeah,
feel that.
it's yeah.
I
Yes, at some
wanted
point.
I wanted to do that the hut to hut biking, the mountain
Yeah.
biking, but that packs up real fast. I didn't that I, I guess you have to book it like a couple years in advance for those huts. So Denver to Durango or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's right about 1 o'clock. I know there may be a couple of other folks who join in as we get going, but again, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Ryan Ross. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Equity, and Inclusion at CCCS, and just want to take a moment to say thank you to you all for being here, being at this month's Equity University presentation. I'm really excited to hear from one of our own today, a professor who's done some really cool things um, in his classroom and curriculum. And so excited to have Paul here to share with us today. Um, Unfortunately, today is one of those days where I have to be one of the folks who watches the recording because I am triple booked today. So I'm only going to be here, Paul, for the first probably 30 minutes or so. So I'll definitely be following up to ask questions later. But for those of you who'll be here for the entire time, you are in great hands. I think this is going to be really, really cool. Definitely share this information with your colleagues. And as always, this is being recorded and will be available on our website. And to close you out, Mandy will be here to tell you how to access the website and how to access the recording. But with that being said, I don't want to take up any more time and want to hear as much of Paul as I can. So we're going to turn it over to Paul. Paul, thank you so much for being here. And the screen, you have the ability to share the screen, and the floor is yours, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here today. And do I have how long is this, by the way? I wasn't sure if it was an hour and a half.
You have either. I'd make it an hour and a half, just
Okay.
so that if we have questions, you can answer those. But if you just want to stop at an hour, you're welcome to do
Okay.
that.
Well, I will go ahead and get started again. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. You're welcome to put any comments, questions into the chat as I'm going along. I'm happy to stop and pause for a moment to be able to answer any of those questions. If I can just get a quick thumbs up from somebody that you can see my PowerPoint, as well as the audio, the text down at the bottom, that would be awesome. Thank you. Perfect. So my name is Paul Weinrauch. I'm currently the department chair and faculty at Red Rocks Community College. I teach photography, MGD. I oversee JOU, some art courses, and video. And today, my goal is to share my experience. And I'd like to say this has been so nerve-wracking for me. It's probably one of the hardest talks I've had to give in a very long time, because for me, it's such a new awakening to understand what whiteness is, and what equity means and how to bring it into my classroom. So it's still very uncomfortable to talk about, but I'm so honored to be here today. And of course, as many of you may know me, I want this to be perfect. It's not going to be, but it deserves to, because this topic is so important. So I was listening to Desmond Meade last week. He was speaking at the Detroit Public Library. And one of the comments that he made while I was listening to him, he was asking himself was, what am I doing to improve the life of another human being? And it certainly made me pause. And I think it's really important to reflect on how I'm showing up to improve another human being's life, and if I'm not doing that, and what I can do to change how I can show up in this world. I have to start by saying thank you, not only for helping me through putting this together, but also over the last year. Some of you, Greg is one of my closest friends, over the last 15 years of trying to understand this topic of equity and racism and whiteness and privilege and all of these other words that seem so confusing to me. The amount of time that these people spent with me and still trying to wrap my head around some of this is amazing, that they've been willing to spend so much time with me. Amanda, who's the acting director right now at Red Rocks Community College for Inclusion and Diversity, the amount of hours, and as well as Karen Neville, the library director at Red Rocks Community College, spending hours with me, texting, emailing, just as things are happening in this world, to be able to process and to be able to understand what was going on was so amazing, to have these people in my life. And there's so many more, because I can't do this by myself. So, one of the things that I emailed right after I got asked about speaking on this is, why should I be giving this talk? Why me? I'm a cissexual male. I had to reflect on if I was actually the best person for this. Being white, is there someone better suited that is from an underrepresented community to speak? And I had to reflect, and if I was actually doing the work, am I actually creating a more equitable classroom? It was so scary to pause and make sure, like, am I actually doing this work? Because I always feel like I've never done enough, and I always need to do more. And in the end, it was. I do have some experience around this topic. I'm excited to share and help this conversation, and that's why I'm here today. Is I really want this to be an ongoing conversation, so that we can all flourish, so that our students can flourish. And everything that I'm going to talk about today is not to pat myself on the back, but to create continued dialogue on whether I'm doing it right. Maybe I can make things better. Maybe we come up with new ideas. But I think it's important for me that I show up and I say yes. And the other thing is that I think was really important for me, is that by saying yes today, it really made me even more accountable. I can't tell you how much time I researched and pondered to see why I thought certain ways. So I'm so excited to be here, to be able to kind of share some of my thoughts on my journey. So how am I trying to be an anti-racist? And this is kind of my journey. I think this was the beginning of me really seeing the inequities that were faced in underrepresented communities, where it really hit home for me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where I came from and kind of how I started developing some of the things that I've done in my classroom. So as an early adult, and I think it's really important to know where I came from as a white male in a very privileged family, as an adult, I was able to give up everything that I owned, and I traveled around the country for years, living from couch to couch, from parking lot to parking lot. I went to music festivals. I actually owned a maple syrup company in Vermont, making maple syrup. And I had time to be able to explore, who I was and what the purpose of life was, and it was like I had that opportunity. I even got a tattoo on my leg at some point in those 20s where it says it's all good. And at the time, I didn't see race. Everyone was the same. I loved everyone. And I could often be found going to rainbow gatherings. I never considered the inequities, the lack of inclusion in the world, except from a philosophical argument to flex my brain rather than being a life and death situation, because I remain unaffected. I always believed there were other people out there to make my life easier. And to some extent, until recently, the idea of creating diversity, inclusion, and equity was something other people were there to fix, not me. So finding my cause. While I was going through my life in my 20s as I became an adult, I started finding organizations to donate to, places to volunteer my time. I would go from one cause to next helping. And if I didn't have a passion about whatever it was I was doing, then I would move on to the next thing because I was unaffected by the suffering of that group. My arrogance that I needed to connect to it to make it valuable. I did not even see my own white privilege. I was making it about me. So, as the political climate changed over the last several years, I often had conversation about politics, life, perspective, truths, about the world. I agreed that racism was bad, that the LGBTQ community should be supported, that women were not treated as equals. As things became more extreme, things started to strike a chord, but I didn't do anything. It was just a conversation. Then George Floyd was murdered. And I think, for me, that was certainly one of my eye-opening experiences. Up until now, I was a president of an organization where I was doing some pronoun events to help some of the community understand how and why to use pronouns and to be able to create a diversity in the arts. But I really wasn't connected to it. I really didn't understand why some of these topics are so important. And then when George Floyd was murdered, I stopped questioning and I just listened. And I agreed. And I just showed up. I was reading and hearing terms I didn't understand. like systemic racism, white privilege, whiteness, Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter. And I can go on with a ton of words that meant nothing to me. Like I've heard them. I didn't understand them. I had ideas about what maybe they thought they meant, but I didn't truly understand that. Some things I disagreed with at the time, but what I decided to do at that point was just believe. I believed everything I heard about racism instead of me trying to say whether it is or it isn't. One of the very first books I listened to right after that happened was by Ijoma. It was a phenomenal book. So you want to talk about race. And I started talking about racism with everybody that would listen. It didn't matter whether you wanted to listen to me or not. I started asking questions. I started talking about all the things that I just wasn't sure. And I thought if I talked enough, I could finally start understanding, and talking to my friends, Karen and Amanda and several other people, to try to figure out what that was. And then to some extent, I figured it out. The problem was me. So during a conversation last summer, it hit me. I don't know what happened or why. I barely remember it, and I actually had to call my friend to kind of talk about this conversation. But I realized that I was not an anti-racist, that I was racist, that by standing by the sideline, enjoying my life and staying in my lane, people were being exploited, hurt, or worse, murdered. I realized, sorry, gotta pause for a second. I realized that I could no longer live this way, that I had to stand up. I couldn't let the fear of losing my way of life stand in my way. And one of the things I heard when I was in my early 20s or just before then is like someone told me, if you want to change, you have to be able to write this blank check, be able to show up and be able to give up everything that you thought you knew about life. And that's what I had to do around this topic. Everything I thought I knew about what racism was, of what it means, what anti-racism is, what equity is, what inclusion means, I had to let everything go and start listening. And I was faced with this indisputable truth that I was not an anti-racist. I can no longer ignore the problems of racism and the intolerance that was standing by. Well, I really do believe in my heart that because I was standing on the sidelines, that I gave strength to the whiteness. I was the problem, and it broke my heart. It really crushed my soul to know that I was not listening to everything that was happening out there. So, reflecting on my industry, in the photography and the arts, I think it was really important as I went into this role of being department chair and faculty in photo and video and graphic design, and some of the other areas that I teach, is what can I do there? So I think it's really important as I kind of start looking and start talking about some of these topics around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's really important that I had to define for my department, not just copy and paste other information that I saw on the internet about what these words mean, but actually rewrite them so that I understood the ideas behind them. So I had some goals as a department when I started working on my diversity, equity, and inclusion statement. And the 3 goals were to create an equitable hiring experience in the visual, audio, and media arts department for instructors. 2, to ensure a welcoming environment for a diverse student body. And then ensure that the department chair, me, was held accountable to a mission that fosters diversity by promoting a culture of inclusion and implementing an equitable practices in the department. So this is what I came up with, and I think it's important that I go through these. So we, my department, are committed to the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This commitment is reflected in our core service of recognizing, empowering, and elevating voices of diversity in our department. Diversity is represented by individuals from different populations, creating an opportunity for a diverse student population with a variety of races, ethnicities, religion, gender expressions, sexualities, geographic backgrounds, culture, ages, abilities, migrant, and socioeconomic groups in our department. We define equity as fair treatment, opportunity guided by social justice, wisdom, and the availability of a robust access points to information and resources for all. Specific to our core mission and vision, we strive to ensure that we create an equitable opportunity for success by expanding and removing barriers for the instructor and creating a welcoming environment for the students wherever we find opportunities to. And then lastly, we define inclusion as the active involvement, participation, representation, and empowerment of the diverse individuals in our community within visual, audio, and media arts. A year and a half ago, I couldn't tell you what any of that meant. And the amount of hours that I had to research and actually look into this information was quite extensive. And I'm still trying to understand pieces of it. And I don't know if I truly ever can. So, inspiration. I do not know what it's like to walk into a classroom and not be inspired. I am a white male. My entire profession, as you're looking at this, and I mean, I think it blows my mind. Karen, who helped me pull some of this data this last week, if you look at it, the white alone in the 2019 photography industry is over 80%. There, you can barely even see anyone else there. So, what about people that are not like me, that are not white or cis male? I never even considered that people do not have the same privilege as me. It never occurred to me. I was running around the world just enjoying life, thinking everyone had equal opportunity. So how do I show up? If there's a lack of diversity, inclusion, and equity in my classrooms, in my profession, where do I even start? There's still so much I didn't and I still don't understand. And there's so much information out there. I felt like I was so overwhelmed. So one solution, do nothing. So that I don't have to be uncomfortable and I can continue to teach like I have and live like I have. What a privilege to think that I can ignore racism. I must make amends for the wrongs that I have created for my own ignorance of putting my head down, whether that is in my own personal life or in the classroom. Until everyone is free, no one is free. Or I can be uncomfortable. I can fail. I can do it wrong. I can do it right. I can ask questions until it becomes second nature. I can show up here today to give this talk. And I still get tired. I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't know how I'm going to have to show up tomorrow. And every morning that I wake up, I hope that I have this opportunity to still have it in me to show up and make our students have more access like I did. Because enough is enough. If I am not promoting equity in my classroom, I need to make room for others that will. And that is my foundation of everything I do in the classroom. If I'm not doing enough, I should be removed. And that's how I live my day every single day. I am not perfect. Some say there's time to grow, learn, and change. Yes, there is always time to grow, learn, and change, but at whose expense? What privilege I get to have as a white person to go ahead and learn and grow while other people die or don't get inspired. That is not okay with me. I really believe that it's time to stand up and fight. And every day that I show up in my classroom, that is what I do. I ask lots of questions. Why am I doing this work? What do I believe the students need to know? Am I listening to the students? How am I designing my classes? Because am I only educating based on my old ideas of how I was taught as a white male, as a white person that is heterosexual? that is able-bodied, that I have a lot of privilege. Am I only looking at what worked for me as a student? And then I think it was actually Dorothy, my dean, that actually mentioned something to me. I don't know, it was a year ago when I first started teaching as faculty. And I don't know what clicked, but I had this expectation of how a student should be present. What a good student looks like. The person that raises their hand, the one that talks and knows when to stop talking, the one that sits in the front of the classroom, that doesn't sit in the back of the classroom, the one that looks up. I always think those are the students I want, because then they just get to listen to me and I get to talk about what I love to talk about. But what about everybody else? The ones that don't know how to connect, the ones that don't raise their hands, the ones that have other life things happening that I'm not even aware of. I think it is so important that we are ready. A couple of weeks ago, listening to Chancellor Garcia, he mentioned that the enrollment of people of color are going up. Then we need to make sure we are ready, or we're going to lose them. I need to know that when they arrive, they will be inspired and they will be welcomed. I personally cannot imagine what it's like to go out into the world and not feel safe, to be hungry, to need an elevator because stairs are not an option, not to have support, not to have a bed, to be looked at differently, to navigate hate speech, to be intimidated with no solution. And there's so much more. How arrogant and privileged of me to think that I can put my head down, ignore the inequities in the world, in my classroom, in my life, and not create change. Every day I would walk into my classroom and think everyone should leave what they have out there at the door. And that's not the way it works. For me, it was a lot easier than for some. So what can I do for the world? What can I do for you? So what is equity? Are my classes equitable? What does it even take to make an equitable classroom? I was able to ignore these questions for so long because I just thought I wanted to talk about photography. This is not about me. Have I been great at this? No way. But I keep showing up when asked, like this talk. I listen when someone tells me we were harmed. I reflect and I do not ignore. I listen because who am I to know all of the answers? And I am going to make wrongs. I'm going to harm, but I need to show up and make those amends. I do the work and I try not to take the shortcuts. This is hard work. This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'll give you an example. A month or two ago, a former student who I introduced to an organization in our industry posted a question, or someone posted a question on Facebook around how to scan something in, unimportant what it was. And someone turned around and posted, well, that's a silly question, and started making fun. My former student made a comment on Facebook. They went back and forth, and she was standing up for herself, trying to really say, what are you talking about? Why are you acting like this? All of these things to kind of like really make sure that new professionals weren't being looked down upon for asking a question, because these two longtime professionals were making fun of it. And it got pretty heated. And what did I do? I knew it was a bad conversation. I knew that it shouldn't be happening. I deleted it. I didn't acknowledge it. I just deleted it. And I felt like that was a good example of what I've tried to do about deleting the history of how we have showed up and ignored the history of the underrepresented, on how we just try to make everything fit into my mold of what you're looking at right now on this screen. And I'm very grateful that this former student had a conversation with me and said, what are you doing? I cannot believe that you just deleted the comment and just left it at that and just tried to erase the history. And I didn't even know what to say. I couldn't believe that. And this is after 9 months of doing all of this work to try to erase history of somebody being so arrogant and so privileged because they had 30 or 40 years of photography experience. And I'm grateful that she was willing to show up and say something to me, and we went back and I brought it up. We dealt with it as an organization. But those things are going to happen to me, and I think it's important that I make sure that I reflect on those. So, how do I create an anti-racist classroom? I think all 4 of these are really important. I listen, I learn, I reflect, and I reform. Okay? The important thing here is that I don't take the shortcuts while I'm doing this, because I have. Because I'm all about do. But how can I reform a classroom and make it more equitable or do it differently than the way that I've been doing it unless I learn and I listen and I reflect? Sometimes I just want it to be easy. And what a privilege to even be able to say that, right? I don't want the challenges of my journey. I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to make the choices that I think that are correct. I can't do that anymore. It's hard to hear other ways of thinking because it challenges my own beliefs. It happens to me every day. I get a little squirmish inside. I start to argue with somebody, but I'm a white guy that sometimes thinks they know it all and has all the right answers, and I don't. So, thinking about reforming and implementing throughout the Colorado and into the classroom, I didn't want to just make changes locally because I think that for everything to work, I have to start from the classroom to Red Rocks Community College, my department, as well as a community college system. So what am I doing to remove the barriers and liberate students in the education system? How am I going to make change? What are things that I can do? And again, a lot of reading, a lot of talking, and things that I feel like have only scratched the surface of the things that I can do in my classroom. I like this graphic. It reminds me, it was one of the first graphics that I remember, or a similar one to this, where I started to begin to know what equality meant and what equity meant. And then just removing the fence altogether so that we could just be together and meet everybody where they needed to be. There's another great one that I saw last week where, anyway, so the equality, and I think this goes back to me. I thought everyone was equal, right? And I think it's important. I thought everyone was equal, that everyone had the same opportunity to get into the classroom, that they had the same opportunity to be able to get student loans so that they could go to school, so that they could buy their books, so that they could buy a computer, that they could go get, take some of those student loans to go buy a camera or all of the technology necessary to be in my profession. But never considering equity, never considering that maybe people aren't where I was when I began or where they began. So what did I do as a whole? Thinking about the Colorado Community College system, what have I started to do to make change? Well, right off the bat, about 2 years ago, I started rewriting all my courses with all of the photo chairs in the state. There's about 4 or 5 of us. And as we started updating the courses, I started considering how can we introduce into the topical outline ideas around some of this so that I knew that this was being carried on not just in my own school, but through the entire state. So on the left here, this is from the Business of Photography course. We wrote this and we added in accessibility, inclusivity, and ethics in marketing. And I could not have done that without. One of the things that I did is we'd go through and we would rewrite all of our course. We'd make our program learning outcomes. We would create our topical outline. And then I would reach out to Amanda. And then Amanda and I would talk. The acting director for diversity and inclusion at Red Rocks, so that we could take a look at this and see how we could make our classes a little bit more inclusive. And then on the other side, this is from my PHO 232, which is the professional photography course. What about lighting for different skin tones? And what about other ethnic considerations? So we added that into the topical outline. And so now when we have our class, we're not just shooting people of one race. So we continue to do these. I'm continuing to work on these. We've updated a few courses. I hope we continue to do it. I'm hoping to then go back and start looking at MGD, FEM, JOU, all of the other courses that I'm teaching, to make sure that they're happening there as well. Work with the state, other state chairs to be able to continue working on some of this stuff. Again, I don't always know what I'm looking for, so I think it's really important to reach out. So what am I doing at Red Rocks Community College to make a difference, to make our space more equitable so that when people show up, they have the same opportunities that I do? One of the first things I did, this was just before I started as the department chair when I was still an adjunct, is I started a Veterans Art Initiative. I wanted to create a supportive community and connections for the veterans. I wanted to show how photography and the art can impact the quality of life. And I had some old ideas about what a veteran looked like. And so when I was asked, I said yes. Okay. I think it was very important for me to start building relationships and understanding and be able to have friendships with people that were not just like me. This was an amazing experience for me. I was able to reach out to a camera manufacturer. I reached out to ASMP, another photo organization, and then working with the Veterans Department at school, we put together this Veterans Art Initiative where they got to have cameras, go on a field trip, work with professionals for an entire day, be able to process their images, be able to print their images, and then eventually we were trying to exhibit them. That did not happen. I'm hoping to continue doing this initiative. It was just amazing to be able to do. The next thing that I think is important is I don't know if people understand how much resources are available to people out in the community. Things that our tax dollars pay for. So every semester, I pay for I do an event called Resources for Small Businesses. This is where I bring in organizations such as SBDC, SBA, MiCasa, Jeffco, RRC Librarian comes in, as well as SCORE, and they talk about the resources that are available for small business owners that are trying to start up their business. Our college has such an amazing student body that are constantly there. We have so many entrepreneurs on our campus, and to be able to offer them resources as they graduate, to still be able to get the information they need, to be able to get their business started, to be able to find grants and other financial opportunities to help them start their business is gigantic. One of my favorite resources from this event is the Women's Business Center. This is MiCasa. They do an amazing job of reaching out and supporting entrepreneurs through all the stages of business development. So it's a great way for our students that when they leave us, where they finally come to us and feel comfortable and feel safe and they feel like they can learn what they need to be able to move from Red Rocks Community College and graduate, but still have some connection to other organizations that will be able to help them, and it won't feel like a cold call. So the other thing is I think we need to ask some hard questions. Last year, I had the opportunity to go in front of Faculty Senate. I was very discouraged by the way Red Rocks Community College and the way the campus police were handling some of the things that were going on from my perspective. And so I wrote a letter and I read it to Faculty Senate. And these are just some of the questions that I asked. But I felt like it was important that I had to stand up and ask some of these questions. And what I remember about asking some of these questions is I had several people say, shouldn't this be handled by somewhere else or someone else or somewhere else? Is this the best place to bring this? And what I remembered was, from my own experience, that standing on the sidelines gave strength to whiteness. And I remember recalling my experience of thinking, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to go out and do the things that I'm supposed to do, and someone else can deal with the problem. And that's so arrogant. But I put myself out there. And after that experience, I went to the executive meeting and I told them my thoughts. I got a little loud. And after that, I was told to stand off and back down. It crushed me for probably over a month. I did not know how to show up again. I gave it my all, and I was crushed. I still never feel like I've ever received answers. We're still working on it. Things are happening. Things are moving. Certainly not at the pace that I would like them to. But I wasn't sure after all of this happened last year, and this was last fall, that now what can I do? Now I felt like I put myself out there. How can I help Red Rocks Community College be more equitable? So when I was asked to be on a PLC, on a race and equity and education policy, I said yes. I have found my PLC that I joined this last year to be wonderful. It was a place where I could explore and think and not have to do. That I could find others to share their experience. We had an amazing speaker come in to talk about how they applied the equity lens to policy development, to give us some ideas how we could do it at Red Rocks Community College, working on establishing a matrix to review policies. And then we had an amazing opportunity to actually review the RRC style guide and look and to see if there's things that we could do to make proper use of pronouns. I participated on as many hiring committees as I could last year. I can't even tell. I'm thinking I was probably on, I don't even know, 6, 7. Arnie would have to tell me how many from HR would have to tell me on how many I was on or how many I asked to be on, because I think it was really important that we were reviewing the questions we were asking candidates around diversity, equity, and inclusion, because I wanted the people that were coming in to be able to support and create some equity and some inclusion and to be able to start building some diversity in our school and in my department and in my classroom. So I went through every single time. I took the time. I didn't just say yes. I took the time to read through every single time I did a hiring committee, to look through the questions, to see how we could better make a question. Also, realizing that sometimes what I found out of this entire hiring process as well as what equity meant, that sometimes the best person for the job, the one that looks best on paper, maybe shouldn't have it. Because the truth is the position that I'm in right now as department chair has been so graciously given to me, or because of who I am as a background. And so to be able to offer somebody that has not been able to have the same opportunities to me, to be able to get to a position that I am in, is really important. So that we can start developing people that are people of color, that are LGBTQ, that are department chairs, whether it be a photography or graphic design, anywhere in our country. That we're allowing those opportunities to exist. The other opportunity I've had this year is to be part of some work groups. And I have had such an amazing time to be able to go through our class observation where, and this was important to me because I didn't know how to do a class observation. And so I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. I had some ideas. And so one of the things that I was able to do is be able to make sure that, again, we had a conversation that when I do an observation of another instructor, that I make sure to remind me that we need to have a conversation about creating a learning environment that is safe and inviting. And what that means when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. To make sure that we're talking about pronouns, making sure that I'm using pronouns and why I'm using pronouns. So in my own department, in the visual, audio, and media arts department, what am I doing? So one of the things that I did is I went and pulled some data with the help of Karen. This is our actual data right now from 2016 to 2021 of our students. And as you can see, from 2016 to 2021, we've sat between 59.9 and 69.9%. How are people of color, how are people other than white people are going to be able to show up and be inspired if it's just people looking like me? Is it because they don't want to be here, or is it something else? And on a side note, I think the data is, I'm really looking forward to looking more into this data, certainly between 2020 to 2021, as we went through COVID and going through the remote learning environment, as it went from 66.8% white to 69.3% white, something that I'm continuing to look at now. So what do I do with this data? How can I change this data? How can I make this, or at least look to see if there's inequities happening in our department? If we want to change as an industry, I need to find speakers that are not white. I need to find instructors that are not white, no matter how daunting the task. And because they're not there. They don't exist. As you can see, the numbers are over 80%. So what am I doing to inspire? What am I doing to promote so that, over the next several years, we have a new generation of people where there is more equity or where there is more diversity? And so one of the things that I've done recently, and this is something that I've been working on for about the last 2 months, is I built a flyer looking for industry professionals, because we are always looking for instructors. And I went ahead and took that the diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring statement that you saw in the beginning several slides ago. And I'm starting to reach out to the community to start trying to find people. My department lending library. I had to ask myself when I started full-time, am I supporting the success of the students' learning outcomes as a department as a whole, or only some of those students? Only the people with money, only the people that have what it's going to take to be able to spend the money on these thousands of dollars of lenses, to be able to come in and purchase a lens that maybe they can find the cash for, only to realize that wasn't the lens that they actually needed, and have to buy another lens for another $1,000. So if I want my students to be successful, I need to provide students with the needed technical expertise in a competitive industry with the proper equipment. I need to remove the barriers to make it more equitable with the high cost of lenses, so that when they move out into the market to be able to start their own business, they're better equipped. And so this year I spent time with Perkins over the last couple of years to get lenses, cameras, and other equipment. And one of the amazing things while this was all happening, because I wanted to find a solution right now so that the students that were in my department at the current time would have some more opportunity, I reached out to camera manufacturers and to lenses. And one of the lenses companies sent me for 2 years enough lenses that students could use and check out from our cage. And right now I'm in current talks with camera manufacturers to lend me cameras over the next year, because diversity is not going to exist unless we create equity in the classroom. Technology is such a barrier for students, as I think many of us are aware of. So every year I do a technology seminar for multiple different reasons. I think it's very daunting to come into our program with all the technology and all of the gear that we use and just start for their first time in college with no understanding of what they're walking into on their first day. So last year I started a technology seminar. It was really just an introduction for any incoming students, first year students, anybody could come and attend our technology seminar so they could learn to see what they were going to be using. So they weren't blindsided by, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle becoming a photographer or a videographer because this is going to be so expensive. I can't do this yet. Getting Adobe set up at home so that students could actually access the Adobe at home and didn't just have to drive to school. Setting up virtual machines because some students don't have the neatest resources. We have students that are using machines that are $200 or $300. They cannot run the software that we need them to be able to be successful, to be able to reach program learning outcomes, to reach course learning outcomes. So what am I going to do to make sure that they have that opportunity? So we set up the virtual machines last year with IT so that students can access all of the computers you're looking at right now. You'll see some white sheets on there. Those are machines that can be connected to off campus by students. The other thing you're looking at the bottom below is one of the other problems that I found this semester is that students working from home are working on monitors that are 1920 by 1080. What you're looking at me right now. I have technology. I forget every day, and this is horrible. I sit in a room that has 3 monitors. 3 monitors. I have a camera. I have lighting kit. I have a mic. I have stuff, and I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, I need to do remote for the rest of my life because it's amazing. Well, I'm privileged to be able to have this stuff. But students that are working on 1920 monitors, and the entire time that I'm teaching my classes, they're trying to figure out how they can move the Zoom stuff on the room out of the way to be able to see their entire pictures. It doesn't work well. So one of the things that I tried to do this year is to be able to get as many extra monitors as I could so that I could check them out to students so they could run off more than one monitor. Although not totally successful, I'm glad it's there, and I'm hoping that we can continue doing this. We've had a couple students check out monitors this semester. There was lots of hiccups. I have not done it great. Even the simple things that I think are important. At my department open houses, I always strive to make sure that people know that I care and I respect them. So I started, I think a year ago, inviting Amanda to come and have a breakout room during our open house. This is an opportunity for students that are incoming in to be able to see student work, to be able to meet the instructors so that it doesn't feel so overwhelming for them when they go into the classroom and everything is new, but also to be able to have a diversity, equity, and inclusion room so that they know that we care. I wanted people to know I was thinking about them, that we are thinking about them, that the college is thinking about them. Social media. I am super active on social media. I think it's important that we're posting and we're looking for stuff. We're looking for artwork. We're looking for other artwork that's just not like me. So these are some recent posts that I put on there. One of them is 10 transgender art creatives whose work you should follow. Another one was on race activism and a photography symposium. And then another one that was posted was about the Rodriguez Baker Scholarship. I posted it, and I thought I did my job. Look, pat myself on the back. I'm making sure we're getting the resources out to the students. And then someone told me the other day, Karen, well, maybe you should do more. Maybe just posting it is not enough. Maybe the act of seeing it going, yeah, I would like to do that. I would like to go ahead and sign up for that scholarship to see if I could get some help. But the daunting task, because I always forget, I've gotten better at it. I can write grants, I read grants, I can do so much more than I could 20, 30 years ago. I have people around me that have been able to help me. But just by posting something and acknowledging there's stuff out there for resources for people, we have to do more. And what was recommended to me by Karen, and I'm so grateful for the people around me. She told me, what about setting up a time to write a workshop, to do a writing workshop, to be able to help these students actually look at this document to figure out how they're supposed to write it. Don't just post it. So that was just this last week. That was just mind-blowing to me. One of the first things I did after George Floyd last year, I think a lot of people started doing book clubs, and we've done them at Red Rocks. All of these awesome books. So You Want to Talk About Race was the first one that I read. Amazing books, but I wanted to bring it a little closer to home. I wanted to start looking at what it looked like around racism, equity, inclusion, all, what is white privilege in our little neck of the woods, in my department, as a photographer, as a graphic designer, as a videographer. What does it look like? And because for me, it's so nice to start to make something that's a little relatable. I'm a photographer. Let's start talking about how the image of whiteness shows up. How am I, as a photographer, doing things that is really encouraging the image of whiteness? And so the very first book that we read as a group was The Image of Whiteness, Contemporary Photography and Racialization. It was mind-blowing. It blew my mind away. I looked at photography so different. I learned so many things. It was so exciting. I would read something, I would go to class, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe what I just read. And we would talk about what I read in the last chapter, and I would incorporate it into every single week of my lesson plans. It was mind-blowing. And now we're reading Art on My Mind, Visual Politics. It's by Bell Hooks. The book is so dense. I think I spend every other word opening a dictionary still to this day. I'm still trying to get through the book. We're on chapter 3, I think, or chapter 4, because a lot of it still doesn't make sense, and that's okay. I can read, I can put it down, I can take my time. I don't have to have all the answers today as an educator. So what am I doing in the classroom? And I think you'll see how this ties back to the book club as well, because I can really say doing the book club for me has really been able to help me integrate a lot of equity, a lot of understanding about how we can make people feel respected in the classroom. I think it's really important to understand the history. As a photographer, where did photography come from? What about graphic design? I think it's really important to understand, is there any cultural appropriations going on in my industry? An example on the right that we're looking at right now were these Shirley cards that were developed when color film came out. They were developed for white people. They did not consider the skin of a darker person, brown, black, only for white people. So exposures, when taken with film, have problems. And I still believe some of these problems still have and still happen in our technology, and we still need to do more to help promote making sure that we're photographing people of color properly. The other thing is making sure that we are showing underrepresented communities in our talks, that we're bringing speakers in, and not just as subjects, because at first, and this actually just hit me a couple weeks ago, that I can do that. I can put in subjects, and I was putting in subjects into my slideshow, but they were the subjects. They weren't the professionals doing it. So if you're looking at the image down in the bottom left, you can see I was actually having somebody that was not like me photographing something. We need to inspire. Pronouns, name pronunciations. This is such a huge thing for me. Using my pronouns was a goal to create a welcoming space for people of all genders. If you go into any of my into any of my Zoom rooms, if you see me show up, I always try to have my pronouns on there. Do I forget? Yes. Should I? No. I need to do a better job, because that's my own arrogance. That's my own me not always caring about some other human being. I need to make sure that I'm doing better, always better. And so I always ask people to use their pronouns. What you're looking at the top left is from our LMS, our Desire to Learn, for our online learning, which I have implemented for all of my remote learning, online or in person I use. And so one of the things that I have them do is I have them put their pronouns down, and I also have them share their full name and something interesting about themselves. And I have them record that audio. I find it to be so disrespectful to have to ask somebody what their name is, or to try to remember or screw up and say the wrong pronouns over and over again. So one of the things that I did to help promote making sure someone didn't feel like less value because I never listened to them is that if I need to, I go back and I listen to how to pronounce someone's name over and over again until I get it right. I do the same things with pronouns. It was about a year ago that we had a student that I screwed up multiple times. And I used he, him, his instead of she, her. I screwed up. First of all, I know from my experience, because I do it, is they were like, oh, don't worry about it. I'm not a big deal. And all I had to do was turn around and say, it is a big deal. I'm sorry. And I moved on. But I think it's really important that I have a good intent with everything that I do. I really want to show up in this world as the best human being I can. That is my goal every waking day of every waking moment. But the truth is that it's about the impact that I have in other people's lives. And that's where I need to do better. Because if we're not using the correct pronouns over and over again, I really believe that's being oppressive and being very disrespectful. The same with name pronunciation. I do not want to oppress people. I want to engage people. I want people to be excited about life. I want people to be excited about learning something that I am so passionate about, and that is photography. So I wanted to bring experts into the classroom. Certainly when I first started doing this, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I invited Amanda, Matthew in. They were great. They came in. They gave a talk on how to have an inclusive marketing in our business. And then I took it up a notch this semester. This semester, what you're looking at right here in my business class is I gave a diversity, equity, and inclusion marketing assignment. I had the students watch something on how to evolve your impact on why diversity, equity, and inclusion matter in marketing. And then all I wanted them to do was to brainstorm ideas. I didn't want to do anything else. I put together this little, it's an application online that everybody could get onto, and I wanted them just to put words on Post-its and what it meant to them to look like what they could do to have diversity and inclusion in their business as they left and had a degree. Every semester, in the beginning of my semester, I always do this thing called a color blindness test for every single student. It's something we do. I usually do it when we're going through our color chapter. But 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women in the world have some sort of color blindness or color deficiency. And right out of the gate, I think it's really important that if there is a problem, I would like to be able to help that person instead of expecting that everybody sees color like me, that everyone sees blue as blue, that everyone sees red as red, and they don't. And I think it's important to pause and reflect to see how other people see the world. And so every semester I've been doing this for, I want to say, about 7 years or so. Creating equity, offering a mix of classes, making sure we're doing high flex, remote, in-person, online, and those are the 4 we're doing right now. And I want to even think even farther outside the box. What are other ways that we can connect to students? Is there other things that I can do? And so that I can meet people and meet students where they are, right? Having times in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, being flexible, although it takes extra time and extra work, to be able to see someone, watch the light bulb going on, is why I do this. So where do I go from here? Because as many of you know, I don't tend to rest. I keep going and going and going. But I do need to rest. We all need to rest. It's so important because if I don't rest, I'm not going to have what it takes to show up and fight. But I also can't rest on my previous accomplishments. Yes, I talked about them today. This is what I'm doing, but I need to do more. I got to keep showing up no matter what. Every day I wake up and remind myself why I'm here. My job is to be of service to others. I have to reflect often on my actions, everything that I do. My goal is, and I don't do this well, but after I do something, I need to stop and pause and say, am I making this available to everybody? Is it actually equitable? And then I share with another human being my experience and not keep it in my head. My intent, as I mentioned, is usually good. And I need to remember the impact from my actions and words is what matters. The last thing is, for me, is sometimes, again, I want to cut corners because this work is so hard, but it's so important that we get help, but we do the leg work myself. That I don't rely on Amanda from the Diversity and Inclusion Department to do this work for me. That I go do the research. That I don't just call up Amanda every time I have a question. I get on Google and I spend hours researching. Because that's when I learn. That's when I learn so that I can pass on my information to students. So, how can I help? And that's what I try to ask every day. So, here's my contact information. Hopefully, I didn't talk too fast. I was really nervous. I want to thank everybody for being here. You're always welcome to contact me. I'm always willing to listen. I'm always willing to have a conversation around any of these topics because it's important for our students. Everything we do is for the student. So thank you.
Paul, thank you so much. I want you guys to know that the VPI, past VPI of Red Rocks was actually talking about Paul's classes and what he was doing during a vice president council meeting. And so that's how I got his contact information. But I was the one who asked him to share all that he's been doing. I know for many of us who are not people of color, we do see so many things and we're like, I see them, but now what? What do I do? And so Paul has been like, it just so many practical ways answering that question. And so I just feel like it's really wonderful to have you as part of this conversation. And I'd like to just see if anyone has any questions for him directly. We're just a quiet group today. So I did the image of whiteness. I did put a link in the chat to that. And then our website, Get Developed, Equity University, that's where you'll find all of our presentations. I will have Paul's presentation up within about 48 hours, and you can access it there. I'll also go ahead and send that out. If you need PDUs, just contact me and I can get you a certificate. Otherwise, I'll let you have one more minute for questions. Anyone?
Hi, Paul. This is Janet Therese from Red Rocks. And I was trying to get this question answered by Arnie, but because I've been on a few hiring committees also. I know you did a study on your students and their backgrounds, their ethnic, racial, and so forth backgrounds. How does that compare to our community in Lakewood and Gilprin and the other counties that we draw from?
Great question, Janet. We're doing slightly better than our community. Our numbers are a little bit better in the community, not my department per se. And as you can see, we're actually doing so. Yes, from the numbers that I look, and I do have those numbers, Janet. If you want to email me, I can send some of those numbers to you.
I appreciate that because we talk about equity, and let's face it, that there are community colleges that are closer to some of the groups that we're trying to attract, and it's not necessarily easier for them to come to our school. And I was just trying to figure out, what the background was of our community.
Yeah, it's been going through my mind too, Janet. And I think one of the other things that went through my mind this last week around some of these topics, that's those specific numbers, is that I really believe that our school, our community colleges, have to be the leader in promoting equity and getting numbers that are better, that we are reaching out to people of color, that because the students that we get will eventually end up in these communities like Lakewood and Golden and just our surrounding area. So if we want our numbers to change, I believe in our area that we shouldn't rely on the cities or the counties to be able to do that. I think that is really, it's my job. I think it's really important that we not only beat those numbers, that we are making sure we're reaching out, that we are teaching people of all different backgrounds and all different abilities, way better than what the city's doing. But those have been my thoughts, and that's what I've been sitting on for the last week.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I had a question.
Yeah.
So, Paul, again, thank you for your very honest and eye-opening presentation all around. And the question is, you shared how you are asking yourself hard questions and really digging into thinking about things from so many different angles, your own practice, the school, your department. What is a way to help others think about asking those hard questions? Or is there a way? I think that's, kind of gets at the heart of it, or to continue to keep asking yourself those hard questions. Because like you said, it's very hard work. Any thoughts on that?
It's wow, great question. It's, I think it is, it's speaking out and being uncomfortable. I think that's what's changed for me, Barbara, is that I had to get to a place where I was willing to lose everything. I'm willing to put myself in just about any position at this point, or I hope that tomorrow I wake up and to put myself into any position that people will think about things in a different way. And so, the things that I've done a couple times over the last year, I literally felt like, if I show up and I ask these hard questions and I present them to the world, and if that means making people uncomfortable and I need to lose my job, not that that would ever happen or it would happen, but that's something that I had to get okay with internally, then that's when I was able to show up and start helping others and start helping people. Because as soon as I start thinking about what I'm going to lose, then I'm no value to anybody else. So I think that was probably the biggest thing that was for me to be able to start presenting new information to people that don't think like me, is that, and people that were honestly above my head, that were my boss's bosses, or people that had more power or more privilege than I did, because I have to be ready to be squished and be okay with that. Does that answer your question, Barbara?
Absolutely. For a question that didn't necessarily have a specific answer. No, but thank you again.
Hey, Paul, this is Josephine. I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you, because I think it was Janet, like she mentioned, because I live over here by Red Rocks, and I see who I live by. I know who my neighbors are, right? And yeah, our demographics are majority white over here. But I appreciate that you're not just saying, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? These people aren't going to come over here. So whatever, I appreciate that. Because honestly, reaching out and offering programs that are attractive will set us apart and attract people to come over here. Because one of my big things are, we don't have very many faculty of color. We don't have we kind of need to refresh our course offerings to make it like a menu. You refresh your menu every season, but we could do that. But what you're doing, and then also programs like our outdoor leadership programs, these are programs that aren't offered in other places, right? That we can go and we can show people that don't necessarily live around here what we have, and that we're open and that we're inclusive. And but I appreciate you not just shrugging it off like, oh, well, that's too hard. They don't live over here. I appreciate that because it makes a difference. And, I haven't unfortunately been able to attend the book club, but I did buy the book and I am reading it. I appreciate your selections, your offerings, because that does make a difference. Because if the institution is showing that there is an interest, a genuine interest, and not just a, hey, let's boost our numbers, it changes the perception. So I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know a lot of people are, this is a very important issue. Um, so I just wanted to say that.
Thanks, Josephine. I love having you around, and hopefully you'll be able to make it to the book club. And you're all welcome to come to the book club, by the way. It's open to everybody. So if you want more information, please reach out to me.
Do you want to put that in the chat, Paul? Do you have a link to the book club?
Yeah, I do. I can grab that right now. I'm gonna grab. We're on Goodreads, so I'll send that to you. If you ask to join, we can connect up that way. So let's grab that.
All right. Anybody else while he's looking that up?
I just
I
put
have
it
a
in.
quick question.
Yeah.
Paul, first, thanks for doing this. I think that you did a great job. You were the right white guy to do that. So thanks.
Thanks.
So I think to myself, what are some of the first steps? How do we recruit? What kind of maybe package deals or what kind of bundles ideas has anybody started right now? How we recruit? Where we recruit?
What do you mean by recruit?
New student, high schools, new student body.
You know what, Tom? I'm not recruiting. I have a lot of work to do before I try doing that. I think I need to be ready. And so right now, and for me personally, I'm just putting everything into place, making sure that I'm doing everything so that I'm not disrespectful, so that I don't look down on anybody, that we don't. So for me, it's kind of a, let me put everything together and put it out there, and you know what, and see what happens. So I'm not trying to boost my numbers. I'm just trying to make my department, our school, our college, our system better.
Thank you. I certainly feel the same way. I guess maybe I'm stepping a little too far ahead of myself, of thinking, well, what can we do? Maybe this is a topic for another discussion in the future. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I'm always welcome to brainstorm with you.
Same here.
I've got a boring curriculum question, Paul. Is that allowed here?
Yes.
So, and really, this is a question for Paul or anybody else. I see we've got quite a few folks here who've spent some time in the curriculum space, and I think a theme for the last few years has been how do we make the process more efficient, and so that people, whether they're creating a new course, changing a current course, creating a new program, that it doesn't take as long as it has in the past. And I think a lot of people have done a great job towards that effort. Definitely have to give a shout out to Mandy and Denise Mosier for all the work that they've done. But when you were talking about your work with Amanda, Paul, it made me think, okay, as we've had in the last few years, this focus on how do we create efficiency, maybe we see a shift in the next few years and focusing on how do we make sure that, say, like a chief diversity officer is involved with the curriculum approval process. And that's just one potential component. So I'm curious, Paul or anybody else, what does the future look like for making sure that we're addressing DEI in our curriculum changes?
Oh my God, Jim, that's amazing to think that we could maybe have someone on the committee be able to be there, to be able to give some input on that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That just, that gives me goosebumps to be able to have somebody, and maybe also having some that on our local colleges, at each of the colleges that's on that curriculum committee at each college, not just at the state, that are also from the diversity and inclusion advisory boards or whatnot, to be able to be present. I think that's, oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
This is Jennings from Red Rocks. That is a great question, and one that I wrestle with my curriculum, because I want it to be inclusive. I'm just, for everybody who doesn't know, my department is education. So I'm teaching future teachers. So this is an incredibly valuable topic, and a topic that has to be in my curriculum. We have to talk about it. We have to address it. And my discipline does a really great job, but I think we can always do better. So, I love that idea, Jim. That would be awesome if we could have that at the curriculum level, to ensure that we're addressing equity and inclusion in all of our courses.
Hey, if that makes something happen because of my talk today, oh my God, it made it all worth being here today. Just that alone, phenomenal. Thanks, Jim. That was great.
Oh yeah, thank you for the responses. And I see Dannon's on here too. I didn't mean to leave you out for the shout out, Dannon. I'm very thankful for everything you do for us. And I apologize if I'm adding items to our potential agendas in the future for SFCC, but I have a feeling you might forgive me.
It's all good, Jim. This is a big one for me as well. And I can tell you, and I'll have more information coming soon, that we are forming a new functional group at the system level, and we are going to be asking several people from all 13 colleges, and it's going to look exactly at that. It's going to look at using high impact practices in curriculum, and teaching modes and all of that. So I'll give a little shout out to that, because I've been writing down names as you guys have been asking questions. Not that anyone's forced to be on that, but you may be receiving a message from me soon once I'm a little more clear on what that's going to look like. But it'll start in the fall. And it doesn't have to be one rep per college. It can be, a 25, 26 member, whatever committee. It's just people that want to get it done. And a bunch of y'all are on this. So that makes me super happy. So yeah, Jim, you're actually right in my lane right now.
Thank you for everything you do, Dan, and I'm so happy to hear that. I have a feeling that might be the case, but I'm out here at Bennett, so I'm out of the loop a lot of times. I'm usually the last to know.
You're doing great, Jim. I appreciate all of you.
I really would like to thank the faculty who are here. I feel like you guys get left out of the conversation a lot, especially with student affairs. And so with Paul, we're trying to remedy that. And then I'm going to work on keeping you guys posted on all of our Equity University presentations that we do, because of course you're welcome to those as well. So thank you for being here. I'm really happy to see you guys. Okay, well, thank you, Paul. That was just fantastic. And I'm just excited for all that you're doing and all that you shared. And hopefully we can multiply that across the colleges. So thank you. And like I said, I will be sharing the presentation here in a couple days for you guys. And did everybody get the link that I posted in the chat to our website? Do you need to post it again? Okay, cool. All right. Well, everyone, have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.